Hello students. Today we'll be discussing about the anterior compartment of forearm, also known as front of forearm or the flexor compartment of forearm. The CBME competencies of this topic are the following. In this lecture, we'll be discussing in detail about the muscles of the flexor compartment, which are again divided into superficial group and deep group. Also, we'll be talking about the nerve supply and the arterial supply of the flexor compartment. We'll be discussing about the flexor retinaculum, which is a modification of deep fascia at the wrist. The forearm or the antebrachium, it extends from the elbow to the wrist. The bones of forearm are laterally the radius, medially is the ulna. At their upper end, they meet the lower end of humerus to form the elbow joint, and the lower end meets the carpal bone to form the wrist joint. The radius and the ulna, they meet each other at the radioulnar joint. So we have two radioulnar joint, that is the superior radioulnar and the inferior radioulnar joint. Middle radioulnar joint is by the interosseous membrane running in between the two bones of forearm. The forearm is invested by deep fascia, which is attached to the olecranon process and the subcutaneous posterior border of ulna. A number of septa, they extend from its deeper surface between the muscles and they reach the bone, thereby dividing the forearm into two compartments. The anterior, also known as the flexor compartment or the volar compartment, which is extending from the medial intermuscular septa. This is the ulna, interosseous membrane and radius, and the lateral intermuscular septa. This is the anterior or the flexor compartment. The second compartment is the extensor compartment, also known as posterior compartment or the dorsal compartment. So the deep fascia, it is sending in the septa, the medial intermuscular septa and the lateral intermuscular septa, thereby dividing the forearm into two compartments, the anterior or the flexor compartment and the posterior or the dorsal compartment. Also at wrist, this deep fascia is thickened to form the flexor and extensor retinaculum, which help to retain the digital tendons in position. We'll be discussing about these extensor retinacula in details in subsequent slides. So if we see here, this is the medial side, this is the lateral side, this is the ulna, this is the radius bone. So the compartment which lies anteriorly is the anterior compartment. This is the medial intermuscular septa, this is the lateral intermuscular septa, and this is the interosseous membrane joining the two bones. Medially is the ulna bone, laterally is the radius. So this is the anterior compartment, and this is the posterior or the extensor compartment. We'll be talking about the anterior or the flexor or the volar compartment in detail today. So if we see here, the floor of anterior compartment is formed by the anterior surface of radius, the anteromedial surface of ulna, and the interosseous membrane between them. This is the ulna, this is the radius. The floor of anterior compartment, this is the medial side, this is the lateral side. The floor is formed by the anterior surface of radius, the interosseous membrane between them, and the anteromedial. This is the medial, this is the anterior surface of ulna. The medially, it is separated from the posterior compartment by the olecranon process and the posterior border of ulna, which gives attachment to the intermuscular septa, medial intermuscular septa, which is a modification of deep fascia. Laterally, the anterior border of radius separates it from the extensor or the posterior compartment. This is the anterior compartment, this is the posterior compartment. So the floor, if we repeat again, is formed by the anterior surface of radius, the interosseous membrane, and the anteromedial surface of ulna, medially by the medial intermuscular septa, laterally by the lateral intermuscular septa. This is the anterior compartment which is getting separated from the posterior compartment by the intermuscular septas. We'll be discussing about the contents of the flexor compartment, which would be muscles, nerves and vessels. Due to the facial arrangement, the muscles are further subdivided into the superficial group, the intermediate group and the deeper group. The superficial group includes the palmaris longus, pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris. The intermediate group is formed by the flexor digitorum superficialis. Deeper group of muscle will have the flexor digitorum profundus, flexor pollicis longus, and pronator quadratus. Due to this arrangement of deep fascia in between, the muscles of front of forearm, the flexor compartment muscles, are arranged in superficial and deep group according to the facial arrangements. The superficial group, it takes origin from the medial epicondyle of humerus, that is the common flexor origin, and thus the superficial group cross the elbow joint. The deep group of muscles, their origin is confined to the bones of forearm, that is the radius and ulna. If we see and appreciate here, the superficial group, that is consisting of the pronator teres, the palmaris longus, the flexor carpi ulnaris, the flexor carpi radialis, and the flexor digitorum superficialis. These are the superficial muscles. The flexor digitorum superficialis, it forms a strata that separates the remaining four superficial muscles from the deeper group of muscles. The deep group of muscle is consisting of the flexor digitorum profundus, the flexor pollicis longus, and the pronator quadratus. Starting with the superficial group, the superficial muscles are 5 in number, and from lateral to medial side, they are lying the pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, flexor carpi ulnaris, and the strata which separates the superficial muscles from the deeper muscles is the flexor digitorum superficialis. So this is the pronator teres muscle. This is the flexor carpi radialis. As the name suggests, it is going towards the radial aspect, and the carpus towards the radial side. Then is the palmaris longus. It is gaining attachment to the flexor retinaculum. We'll be seeing in the later slides. Flexor carpi ulnaris. It is running on the ulnar side, reaching the carpal on the ulnar side, and the flexor digitorum superficialis. Starting with the pronator teres. The pronator teres has two heads of origin, the humeral head and the ulnar head. The humeral head is arising from the medial epicondyle through common flexor origin and lower part of medial supracondylar ridge, and the ulnar head is arising from the medial border of coronary process of ulna. So the two heads, the humeral head and the ulnar head. Ulnar head is arising from the medial border of coronary process of ulna, and the humeral head is arising from the lower part of medial supracondylar ridge and the medial epicondyle through common flexor tendon. Pronator teres is getting attachment to the rough area which is midway along the lateral surface of shaft of radius at the summit of its lateral curve. That is, it is gaining attachment to the middle 1/3 of lateral surface of shaft of radius. The pronator teres is gaining attachment onto the middle 1/3 of lateral surface of shaft of radius. So it is attaching to a rough area which is midway along the lateral surface of shaft of radius at its summit of the lateral curve. So talking about pronator teres again, two heads of origin, humeral head and ulnar head, and they are gaining attachment onto the lateral 1/3 of shaft of radius. So it crosses the elbow joint, the superficial group of muscle. So in this picture, if we see, this is the humeral head of pronator teres, this is the ulnar head. We can appreciate that the median nerve is passing between the two heads of pronator teres. Also, if we appreciate, this is the ulnar artery which is passing deep to the deep head of pronator teres. In this, if we see again, The median nerve, it passes between the two heads of pronator teres, whereas the ulnar artery passes deep to the deep head of pronator teres. Talking about the nerve supply, the pronator teres is supplied by the median nerve. The pronator teres causes pronation of forearm, and since it crosses the elbow joint, it causes flexion of forearm at the elbow joint. Talking about the flexor carpi radialis, another muscle of the superficial group, it is arising from the medial epicondyle of humerus, that is the common flexor origin, and from the intermuscular septa. It passes deep to the flexor retinaculum through a groove on the trapezium. Trapezium is a carpal bone. So the flexor carpi radialis is getting inserted onto the palmar surfaces of bases of second and third metacarpal bones. So it is arising from a common flexor origin, passing deep to flexor retinaculum. It is getting inserted onto the palmar surface of base of second and third metacarpal bones. The second and third metacarpal bones, here we can appreciate that insertion of flexor carpi radialis onto the palmar surface of base of second and third metacarpal bones. Also, the radial artery lies between the tendon of brachioradialis, which is getting inserted onto the lateral side of radius just above the styloid process, and the flexor carpi radialis. The radial artery is lying in between these two muscles, that is the flexor carpi radialis and the brachioradialis. Nerve supply of flexor carpi radialis is the median nerve. It causes flexion of wrist along with another muscle, that is the flexor carpi ulnaris. Also, it causes abduction of wrist with extensor carpi radialis longus and extensor carpi radialis brevis muscles. The combined action of flexor carpi radialis along with the extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, it causes abduction at the wrist joint. It is getting inserted to the distal half of flexor retinaculum and to the apex of palmar aponeurosis through the flexor retinaculum. The tendon of palmaris longus passes in front of flexor retinaculum and it is continuous with the central part of palmar aponeurosis. So the tendon of palmaris longus, it getting inserted onto the distal half of flexor retinaculum, and it is also inserting to the apex of palmar aponeurosis through flexor retinaculum. Nerve supply of palmaris longus is the median nerve. It causes flexion at the wrist joint and it makes the palmar aponeurosis tense. Just proximal to the wrist, the median nerve projects laterally deep to the palmaris longus and it lies between the flexor carpi radialis and palmaris longus. Now talking about the flexor carpi ulnaris muscle. It has two heads of origin, the humeral head and the ulnar head. The humeral head is arising from the medial epicondyle through common flexor origin, and the ulnar head has an extensive origin. The ulnar head is arise from the medial margin of olecranon process, proximal to third of posterior border of ulna, and through an aponeurosis which it shares with extensor carpi ulnaris and the flexor digitorum profundus muscle, and also it arises from the intermuscular septa between flexor carpi ulnaris and flexor digitorum superficialis. Occasionally, a slip also arises from the coronoid process of ulna. A tendinous arch, it connects the two heads. The two heads of flexor carpi ulnaris, that is the humeral head and the ulnar head, they are connected by a tendinous arch, and the ulnar nerve and the posterior ulnar recurrent artery, it passes beneath that tendinous arch. The tendon of flexor carpi ulnaris, it is gaining attachment to the pisiform bone and hence to the hook of hamate and thereby to the base of fifth metacarpal by pisohamate and pisometacarpal ligament. So the flexor carpi ulnaris, the primary insertion is on the pisiform bone and thence it prolonged to the hook of hamate forming the pisohamate ligament and then to the base of fifth metacarpal, thus forming the pisometacarpal ligament. So flexor carpi ulnaris from the medial epicondyle and the ulnar origin, it is getting inserted. The primary insertion is on the pisiform bone and thence it is getting inserted onto the hook of hamate through pisohamate ligament and to the base of fifth metacarpal by the pisometacarpal ligament. The nerve supply of flexor carpi ulnaris is through the ulnar nerve. The flexor carpi ulnaris, it causes the flexion of wrist along with flexor carpi radialis muscle. Also, it causes adduction of wrist along with extensor carpi ulnaris. The flexor carpi ulnaris, it fixes the pisiform bone during contraction of the hypothenar muscles. Now talking about the flexor digitorum superficialis muscle, it is the superficial muscle which is counted as an intermediate group since it forms a strata which separates the superficial from the deeper group of muscle. Talking about its origin, it has humero-ulnar head and a radial head. The humero-ulnar head is arising from the medial epicondyle of humerus via common flexor tendon. An anterior band of ulnar collateral ligament and the adjacent intermuscular septa, and from the medial margin of coronoid process proximal to the ulnar origin of pronator teres. So this is about the humero-ulnar head of the flexor digitorum superficialis. The radial head, it arises from the anterior radial border or the anterior oblique line. It is extending from the radial tuberosity to the insertion of pronator teres. So the flexor digitorum superficialis has two heads, the humero-ulnar and the radial head. So the fibrous arch, it connects the two heads of flexor digitorum superficialis. The fibrous arch is connecting the two heads. This is the radial head, this is the humero-ulnar head. The fibrous arch connects the two heads and it transmits beneath it the median nerve and the ulnar artery. The median nerve is seen to be plastered to the deep surface of this muscle. The muscle is usually separating into two stratas directed towards the digit 2 to 5. The superficial stratum, derived mostly from the radial head, it divides into two tendons for the middle and the ring finger, and the deep strata gives off a muscular slip to join the superficial fibers and then ends in two tendons for the index and the little finger. So this tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis. It divides into tendons for the medial four fingers. As the tendon passes beneath the flexor retinaculum, they are arranged in pairs. The superficial pair passes towards the middle and ring finger, and the deeper pair pass towards the index and the little finger. If we see here, deep pair is going towards the index and the little finger, whereas the superficial pair is going towards the middle and the ring finger. Distal to the carpal tunnel, the four tendons they diverge and each passes towards the corresponding finger superficial to the corresponding flexor digitorum profundus tendon. Talking about the insertion of flexor digitorum superficialis, the tendons of superficialis muscle, after crossing through the flexor retinaculum, they splits into two slips at the base of proximal phalanx, and then they subsequently reunite and then decussate again, finally gaining insertion into the sides of shaft of middle phalanx of medial forefinger. So if we see again, the flexor digitorum superficialis passing deep to the flexor retinaculum, dividing into four tendons for the medial four fingers. It is splitting into two slips at the base of proximal phalanx. It then reunite and then appears to decussate. Finally, it resplit for the insertion onto the sides of shaft of middle phalanx or medial forefinger. The flexor digitorum superficialis is supplied by the median nerve, and the actions of flexor digitorum superficialis, it causes flexion of the middle phalanx at proximal interphalangeal joint, and it causes flexion at metacarpophalangeal joint of medial forefingers. It also helps in flexion of the wrist. Now coming to the deep muscles of front of forearm, they are the flexor pollicis longus, flexor digitorum profundus, and the pronator quadratus. The flexor digitorum profundus, flexor pollicis longus, and the pronator quadratus are the deeper muscles of front of forearm. Talking about the flexor pollicis longus, it is arising from the anterior surface of shaft of radius below the anterior oblique line, and it intervenes between the radial tuberosity and the upper attachment of pronator quadratus. So it lies between the two, the anterior oblique line, and it intervenes between the radial tuberosity and upper attachment of pronator quadratus. So it is arising from the anterior surface of shaft of radius below the anterior oblique line. Also it arises from the adjoining interosseous membrane and lower part of medial margin of coronoid process of ulna. So this is the flexor pollicis longus. It is getting inserted, it passes beneath the flexor retinaculum within the carpal tunnel, and it is getting inserted onto the palmar surface of base of distal phalanx of thumb. Flexor pollicis longus, as the name suggests, longus, it is getting inserted onto the base of distal phalanx of thumb. It passes beneath the flexor retinaculum and it is getting inserted onto the palmar surface of base of distal phalanx of thumb. It is supplied by the anterior interosseous branch of median nerve. It causes flexion of thumb. Talking about another muscle of deep group, it is the flexor digitorum profundus. The flexor digitorum profundus is arising from the anterior and the medial surface of upper 3/4 of shaft of ulna and from the medial surfaces of coronoid and the olecranon process. It arises from the adjoining interosseous membrane and As said previously, it arises from the upper 3/4 of posterior border of ulna by an aponeurosis in common with the flexor carpi ulnaris and the extensor carpi ulnaris. So this is the flexor digitorum profundus, which is taking its origin majorly from the shaft of ulna. The flexor digitorum profundus, this muscle ends in 4 tendon for the medial 4 fingers. If we see here, this muscle ends in 4 tendons for the medial 4 finger, and it also provides origin to 4 lumbrical muscles which will be dealt in the lecture on palm. Now each tendon, it enters within a fibrous flexor sheath of the corresponding digit, and opposite the proximal phalanx, it passes distally through the perforated tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis, thereby finally getting inserted onto the palmar surface of base of distal phalanx of medial forefinger. It appears to pass through the perforation of tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis to be getting inserted onto the palmar surface of base of distal phalanx of medial forefingers. So, if we appreciate again, the flexor digitorum profundus tendon, it divides into 4 tendons for the medial 4 fingers, and it is getting inserted onto the bases of palmar surface of base of distal phalanx of medial 4 fingers. It appears to pass through the perforated tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis. As previously discussed, the flexor digitorum superficialis is getting inserted onto the side of middle phalanx, whereas the flexor digitorum profundus tendon is getting inserted onto the base of distal phalanx for the medial 4 fingers. Nerve supply of this muscle is through the anterior interosseous branch of the median nerve, which is supplying the lateral part, and the medial half of this muscle is supplied by the ulnar nerve. Now if we see here, this is the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus, and this superficial is the flexor digitorum superficialis, which is dividing into slips, and it is decussating, finally reuniting, and then splitting again to gain attachment onto the sides of the middle phalanx. And the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus, it appears to be passing through the perforation of the flexor digitorum superficialis and gaining attachment onto the bases of distal phalanx of the medial forefingers. The action of flexor digitorum profundus, it causes the flexion of terminal phalanges, and it flexes the other joints of digits and the rest. The flexor digitorum profundus, it is a chief gripping muscle forming the muscular elevation seen on the posterior surface of forearm medial to the subcutaneous posterior border of ulna. The last muscle of the deep groove is the pronator quadratus. As the name suggests, it is quadrilateral in shape. It arises from a bony ridge on the anteromedial surface of the lower 1/4 of ulna. So it arises from the anteromedial surface of lower 1/4 of ulna, and it is getting inserted by the superficial and the deep fibers. The superficial fibers, they are sloping laterally and they are inserted onto the anterior surface of lower 1/4 of radius and adjoining anterior border of radius above the styloid process. So the superficial fibers are getting inserted onto the anterior surface of lower 1/4 of radius and the anterior border of radius above the styloid process, and the deep fibers are getting inserted onto the triangular area above the ulnar notch. So deep fiber are getting inserted onto the triangular area just above the ulnar notch. The nerve supply of pronator quadratus is through the anterior interosseous branch of median nerve, and pronator quadratus is the principal pronator of forearm, and the deep fiber, it prevents the separation of lower parts of radius and ulna. Talking about the action of deep muscles, the flexor pollicis longus, it flexes both the interphalangeal, the metacarpophalangeal joints of thumb and wrist. Flexor digitorum profundus, it is a flexor of both the interphalangeal, the metacarpophalangeal joints of medial forefinger, and it also flexes the wrist. The pronator quadratus, it causes pronation of forearm along with the pronator teres. Talking about the synovial sheath of flexor tendons. The long flexor tendons of the fingers, that is the tendons of flexor digitorum superficialis and the flexor digitorum profundus, they are enclosed in a common synovial sheath while passing deep to the flexor retinaculum within the carpal tunnel. The sheath, if we see, has a parietal layer lining the walls of carpal tunnel and a visceral layer which is closely applied to the tendons. If we see the arrangement of these tendons, the superficialis tendon, the flexor digitorum superficialis tendon, as already been discussed, they are divided into sets of superficial and deep, and the deepermost layer here is signifying the tendons of flexor digitorum profundus. So the sheath, the synovial sheath, has the parietal lining, the walls of carpal tunnel, and the visceral layer which is closely applied to the tendon. It appears that the synovial sac has been invaginated by the tendons from its lateral side. This is the medial side, this is the lateral side. It appears that this sac of synovial bursa is invaginated by the tendons from its lateral side, thereby giving this appearance. So the common flexor synovial sheath or the ulnar bursa, if we talk about it, the long flexor tendons of the fingers, that is the flexor digitorum superficialis and the flexor digitorum profundus, they are enclosed in a common synovial sheath while passing deep to the flexor retinaculum. We have already discussed that the sheath has a parietal layer which is lining the wall of carpal tunnel and the visceral layer which is closely applied to the tendon. From the arrangement, it appears that the synovial sac has been invaginated from its lateral side. The synovial sheath, it extends upwards for 2 to 3 inches into the forearm and downwards into the palm up to middle of shaft of the metacarpal bones. It is important to note that the lower medial end is continuous with the digital synovial sheath of the little finger. So the infection of ulnar bursa is usually secondary to the infection of little finger. And in turn, this may spread to the forearm space of Perona, resulting in an hourglass swelling known as the compound palmar ganglion. So, the ulnar bursa invaginates all the tendons of flexor digitorum superficialis and flexor digitorum profundus. The medial part of the ulnar bursa or the sheath extends distally without interruption on the tendon of the little finger, and the lateral part of the sheath stops in the middle of the palm. The synovial sheath of the tendon of flexor pollicis longus, also known as the radial bursa, this sheath is usually separate, but it may communicate with the common sheath behind the retinaculum. Superiorly, it is coextensive with the common sheath, and inferiorly, it extends up to the distal phalanx of thumb. Also, the digital synovial sheath, the enclosing the flexor tendons in fingers, and they line the fibrous flexor sheaths. The digital sheath of little finger is continuous with the ulnar bursa and that of the thumb with the radial bursa. However, the digital sheets of index, middle, and the ring finger are separate and independent. Talking about the flexor retinaculum, it is a modification of deep fascia gaining attachment to the carpal bones. It is a strong fibrous band which acts as a tie beam, and it converts the anterior concave or the palmar aspects of carpal into a fibro-osseous tunnel. Thus, the tunnel contains the digital flexor tendons and the median nerve. The attachment of flexor retinaculum is on to the carpal bones. The carpals medially, the flexor retinaculum is gaining attachment to the pisiform bone on the proximal row, and distally on the medial side it is gaining attachment onto the hook of Hammett. Laterally, proximal attachment is on the tubercle of scaphoid bone. Distally, the crest of trapezium gives attachment to the flexor retinaculum. So all the corner carpals are giving attachment to this flexor retinaculum, which keeps the flexor tendons in position. The flexor retinaculum on each side, it presents a slips of attachment. Laterally, this is the lateral aspect, this is the medial aspect. Laterally, this flexor retinaculum, it splits into two laminae, one superficial which is gaining attachment onto the tubercle of scaphoid and the tubercle of trapezium. One deep lamina, it is attached to the medial lip of groove on the trapezium. Within this groove, the two laminae, they form a tunnel which is lined by synovial sheath containing the tendon of flexor carpi radialis. Medially, a superficial slip is gaining attachment to the pisiform bone. The ulnar nerve and the ulnar vessels, they pass deep to this slip. Proximally, the flexor retinaculum blends with the deep fascia of forearm, and distally it is continuous with the palmar aponeurosis and the palmar fascia. The structures which pass superficial to the flexor retinaculum are the tendon of palmaris longus, the palmar cutaneous branch of the ulnar nerve, and the palmar cutaneous branch of the median nerve. Also, the ulnar nerve and the ulnar vessels, they pass superficial to the flexor retinaculum, and also the superficial palmar branch of radial artery crosses the flexor retinaculum superficially. The structures which passing deep to the flexor retinaculum are the median nerve, the tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis, the tendons of flexor digitorum profundus, the ulnar bursa and the radial bursa, the tendon of flexor pollicis longus, the tendon of flexor carpi radialis. It lies between the retinaculum and its deep slip in the groove on the trapezium. So revising again, the flexor retinaculum is a strong fibrous band which bridges the anterior concavity of the carpus, and it converts it into a tunnel, the carpal flexor tunnel. It is gaining attachment medially to the pisiform bone and to the hook of Hammett, laterally to the tubercle of scaphoid and the crest of trapezium. On either side, the retinaculum has a slip. The lateral deep slip is attached to the medial lip of groove on trapezium, which is thus converted into a tunnel for the tendon of flexor carpi radialis. The medial slip or the volar carpal ligament is attached to the pisiform bone. The ulnar nerve and the ulnar vessels, they pass through this slip. So the structures which are passing superficial to flexor retinaculum are the tendon of palmaris longus, the palmar cutaneous branch of the ulnar nerve, ulnar nerves and ulnar vessels. The flexor carpi ulnaris is getting partly inserted onto the retinaculum, and the thenar and hypothenar muscles, they arise from the flexor retinaculum. Structures which pass deep to the flexor retinaculum are the median nerve, the tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis, and the tendon of flexor digitorum profundus, and the tendon of flexor pollicis longus. Also the ulnar bursa and the radial bursa. The flexor carpi radialis tendon, it lies between the retinaculum and its deep slip in a groove on trapezium. In this, we can see the cut ends of the flexor retinaculum and the arrangement of the flexor tendons. This is the flexor pollicis longus tendon. This is the flexor carpi radialis tendon. This is the tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis and the flexor digitorum profundus tendon. The median nerve, as we have seen, it passes deep to the flexor retinaculum. It may be compressed in a tunnel by the long continuous swelling of the synovial sheath, resulting in what is known as the carpal tunnel syndrome. It is manifested by the weakening and wasting of thenar muscles of palm with loss of power of opposition and loss of cutaneous sensation on the palmar surface involving lateral 3.5 digits. So, the carpal tunnel syndrome consists of sensory and motor symptoms in hand caused by compression of the median nerve in the carpal tunnel. The syndrome may be caused by the bony pathology like arthritis of wrist and carpal joints, or the dislocation of lunate bone, or an old fracture of the wrist. The syndrome may also be caused by soft tissue pathology like tenosynovitis, obesity, or toxemia of pregnancy. The carpal tunnel syndrome, it usually occurs in females between the age of 40 to 70, and they complain of intermittent attack of pain in the distribution of median nerve on one or both sides. The attack frequently occurs at night and the pain may be referred proximally to forearm and arm. There may be wasting of thinner muscle supplied by the median nerve. The pain may be relieved by the nocturnal splinting of the wrist in slight dorsiflexion. In severe and resistant cases, it may require division of the flexor retinaculum. Now talking about the arteries on the front of forearm. The main arteries of the forearm are the radial artery and the ulnar artery. However, they supply the hand through the deep and the superficial palmar arches. The arterial supply of forearm is chiefly derived from the common introitious artery, which is a branch of ulnar artery, which further divides into an anterior introitious artery and a posterior introitious artery. The posterior introitious artery is reinforced in upper part and it's replaced in the lower part by the anterior introitious artery. Talking about ulnar artery, it is a larger terminal branch of the brachial artery and it begins in the cubital fossa. The artery runs obliquely downwards and medially in the upper 1/3 of forearm, but in the lower 2/3, its course is nearly vertical in forearm. It passes superficial to the flexor retinaculum and it enters the palm. If we see in the upper half, the artery is deep and it is covered by the pronator teres, the flexor carpi radialis, the palmaris longus, the flexor digitorum superficialis, and the flexor carpi muscles. In the lower half, the artery is superficial and it is covered only by skin, superficial and deep fascia. The origin of artery lies on the brachialis and on the rest of its course, the artery is lying on the flexor digitorum profundus. Talking about the branches, the Ulnar artery gives off anterior and posterior ulnar recurrent arteries which take part in anastomosis around the elbow joint. It gives a common interosseous artery which further divides and gives rise to anterior interosseous and posterior interosseous artery. Also, the muscular branches supply the medial muscles of forearm. The palmar and the dorsal carpal branches, they take part in anastomosis around the wrist joint. The palmar carpal branch helps to form the palmar carpal arch, whereas the dorsal carpal branch, they arise just above the pisiform bone and it winds backwards deep to the tendons and it ends in the deep dorsal carpal arch. This arch is formed medially by the dorsal carpal branch of the ulnar artery and laterally by the dorsal carpal branch of radial artery. Superiorly, this arch is joined by anterior and the posterior interosseous arteries. Inferiorly, the arch supplies three slender dorsal metacarpal arteries. Talking about the common interosseous artery, the common interosseous artery is arising just below the radial tuberosity. It is the largest branch arising in the cubital fossa, dividing into the anterior interosseous artery and a posterior interosseous artery. Anterior interosseous artery, it descends in contact with the interosseous membrane running between the flexor pollicis longus and flexor digitorum profundus, accompanying the median nerve. At the upper border of pronator quadratus, it pierces the interosseous membrane to enter the extensor compartment, thereby helping to form the posterior carpal arch. Anterior interosseous artery, it gives muscular branches and it also gives the nutrient arteries to radius and ulna. The posterior interosseous artery, at its origin, it gives out interosseous recurrent artery which takes part in the formation of anastomosis around the elbow. Also, posterior interosseous artery, it passes to the extensor compartment at the upper border of interosseous membrane and ends by anastomosing with the anterior interosseous artery by forming the posterior carpal arch. The radial artery is a small terminal branch of the brachial artery in the cubital fossa and it is running downwards and to the wrist joint. The palmar carpal branch of the radial artery, it arises near the lower border of pronator quadratus. It runs medially deep to the flexor tendons and it ends by anastomosing with the palmar carpal branch of the ulnar artery, thereby resulting in formation of palmar carpal arch. This palmar carpal arch is joined from above by a branch of the anterior interosseous artery and from below by a recurrent branch of deep palmar arch, resulting in the formation of cruciform anastomosis. This palmar carpal arch, it supplies the bones and joints of wrist. Also, the superficial palmar branch of the radial artery arises just before the radial arteries leaves the forearm. The superficial palmar branch, it passes through the thinner muscles, ends either by supplying the thinner muscles or by joining the terminal part of the ulnar artery to complete the superficial palmar arch. The radial artery is used for feeling of the arterial pulse at the wrist. The pulsation can be felt well in this situation because the presence of radius bone behind the artery. At the wrist, the radial artery further gives the dorsal carpal branch of radial artery for dorsal metacarpal artery, princeps pollicis artery, and the radialis indicis artery. Talking about the nerve of the front of forearm, the main nerve of front of forearm is the median nerve. In the cubital fossa, it lies medial to the brachial artery and it enters the front of forearm by passing between the two head of pronator teres, and it also crosses the ulnar artery from which it is separated by deep head of pronator teres. Along with the ulnar artery, the median nerve passes beneath the fibrous arch of the flexor digitorum superficialis, and it runs deep to this muscle on the surface of flexor digitorum profundus, about 5 cm above the flexor retinaculum. It becomes superficial and it lies between the tendon of flexor carpi radialis laterally and flexor digitorum superficialis medially. The median nerve enters the palm by passing deep to the flexor retinaculum through the carpal tunnel. Talking about the branches and distribution of median nerve, in the forearm, muscular branches are given to all the superficial flexors of forearm except the flexor carpi ulnaris. So the muscular branches in the forearm are given to pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, and the flexor digitorum superficialis. The anterior interosseous branch, it is given off in the upper part of forearm. It supplies the flexor pollicis longus and the lateral half of flexor digitorum profundus. The lateral half of flexor digitorum profundus, which are giving rise to tendons for the index and middle finger. And also the anterior interosseous branch, it supplies the pronator quadratus. The anterior interosseous branch also supplies the elbow joint, the superior and inferior radioulnar joint, and interosseous membrane and wrist joint. The palmar cutaneous branch arises a short distance above the flexor retinaculum, and it supplies the skin over the thenar eminence and the central part of palm. Also, the communicating branches are given to the ulnar nerve, and also vascular branches supply the radial and ulnar artery. Branches in the palm of the median nerve are, since the median nerve passes beneath the flexor retinaculum, it gives a recurrent muscular branch to the three thenar muscles and first and second lumbrical. Also, it divides into lateral and medial branches, thereby supplying the lateral 3.5 digits. So, if we revise again, the muscular branches in the forearm are given to all the superficial flexors of forearm except the flexor carpi ulnaris. The anterior interossei branch is supplying the flexor pollicis longus and flexor digitorum profundus, the lateral half of flexor digitorum profundus, and also anterior interosseous branch supplies the pronator quadratus. Talking about the applied anatomy of median nerve, the median nerve controls the coarse movement of hand as it supplies most of the long muscles of front of forearm. It is also therefore called as the laborer's nerve. When the median nerve is injured above the level of elbow, as in supracondylar fracture of humerus, the flexor pollicis longus is paralyzed, so the patient is unable to bend the terminal phalanx of the thumb. Also, the forearm is kept in supine position due to paralysis of pronators. The hand is adducted due to paralysis of flexor carpi radialis, and also the flexion is weak at wrist. Flexion at interphalangeal joints of index and middle finger is lost, so that the index and the middle finger, they tend to remain straight while making a fist. A thumb deformity is present due to paralysis of thenar muscles. Injury of the median nerve at the level of wrist is more common than at the elbow. due to superficial position of the nerve at this site. Injury at the wrist of median nerve produces ape thumb deformity due to the thinner muscles are wasted and thumb is adducted and laterally rotated. Ape thumb deformity in which the thinner muscles are wasted and the thumb is lying in adducted and laterally rotated. Opposition of thumb is lost, and also the paralysis of first and second lumbrical makes the index and middle finger lag behind in slowly making a fist. Now talking about the ulnar nerve is a continuation of the medial cord of brachial plexus. After its formation, the nerve, it passes downwards along the medial side of third part of axillary artery. The ulnar nerve accompanies the medial side of brachial artery in the proximal half of arm. Near the middle of the arm, it pierces the medial intermuscular septa along with the superior ulnar collateral artery, thereby descending between the medial intermuscular septa and medial head of triceps, and it appears in the interval between the medial epicondyle and olecranon process. Now here the nerve lodges in a groove on the dorsal surface of base of medial epicondyle. So at the elbow, the ulnar nerve is lying behind the medial epicondyle of humerus. It enters the forearm by passing between the two heads of flexor carpi ulnaris. In the forearm, the nerve runs between the flexor digitorum profundus and the flexor digitorum superficialis laterally. The nerve enters the palm by passing superficial to the flexor retinaculum, lateral to the pisiform bone. At the wrist, the ulnar neurovascular bundle, it lies between the flexor carpi ulnaris and the flexor digitorum superficialis. The bundle enters the palm by passing superficial to the flexor retinaculum. Also, the nerve becomes superficial and is covered by skin and fascia, and they run along the lateral side of flexor carpi ulnaris. Here, the ulnar nerve is accompanied by the ulnar artery on its radial side. Also, the ulnar nerve and ulnar artery, they pass superficial to the flexor retinaculum. On reaching the proximal part of hypothenar eminence, the nerve passes beneath the palmaris brevis and divides into superficial and deep terminal branches. Talking about the branches of ulnar nerve, the muscular branches are given to the flexor carpi ulnaris and the medial half of flexor digitorum profundus, which give rise to the tendons of ring and little finger. Also, in the hand, all the intrinsic muscle of hand except the three thenar muscles and first and second lumbrical, they receive their nerve supply by the ulnar nerve. The palmar and dorsal cutaneous branches. The palmar cutaneous nerve arise in the middle of forearm and they supply skin over the hypothenar eminence, whereas the dorsal branch arises 3 inches above the wrist. It winds backward and it supplies the proximal part of the ulnar 2.5 fingers and the adjoining area of dorsum of hand. Also, the articular branches are given off to the elbow joint. The vascular branches, it provides vasomotor twigs to the axillary, brachial, ulnar artery and the deep palmar arch. So summary of distribution of the ulnar nerve, it supplies the flexor carpi ulnaris, the medial half of the flexor digitorum profundus, all the intrinsic muscles of the hand except the thenar muscles and the first and second lumbricals. Also, it supplies the medial 1.5 of the fingers. Since most of the intrinsic muscles of the hand are supplied by the ulnar nerve, which are used by violinists, the ulnar nerve is also known as musician nerves and it controls the fine movement of fingers. Talking about the applied anatomy, the common site of compression or the division of ulnar nerve are behind the medial epicondyle, producing the cubital tunnel syndrome. Also at the wrist between the pisiform and the flexor retinaculum below the hook of Hammett. In the cubital tunnel syndrome, on attempting to flex the wrist, the hand is abducted due to unopposed action of flexor carpi radialis. The medial four fingers, they cannot be abducted and adducted due to paralysis of dorsal and palmar interossei. Due to similar reasons, the fingers are extended at metacarpophalangeal joints by the action of common digital extensor, and this results in passive flexion of interphalangeal joint. The ulnar nerve is commonly injured at the elbow behind the medial epicondyle. When the nerve is injured at the elbow, the flexor carpi ulnaris and the medial half of flexor digitorum profundus are paralyzed. Due to this paralysis, the medial border of forearm becomes flattened. An attempt to produce flexion at the wrist results in abduction of the hand. The tendon of flexor carpi ulnaris does not tighten on making a fist. Flexion of the terminal phalanges of the ring and little finger is lost. When the ulnar nerve lesion is at the wrist, it produces ulnar claw hand, which involves mainly the ring and the little finger. True claw hand, that is involving all the fingers, is produced by combined lesion of the ulnar and median nerve. Ulnar claw hand is characterized by the following signs: hyperextension at the metacarpophalangeal joint and flexion at the interphalangeal joint involving the ring and the little finger. The little finger is held in abduction by extensor muscles. The intermetacarpal spaces are hollowed out due to wasting of the interosseous muscle. Claw hand deformity is more obvious in wrist lesion than in the elbow lesion, because in wrist lesion the profundus muscle is spared. This causes marked flexion of the terminal phalanges. Also, the thumb cannot be abducted due to the paralysis of adductor pollicis, and also there is wasting of hypothenar muscles. There is loss of sensation of medial 1.5 digits and the adjoining medial side of hand. The condition of claw hand, it becomes more visible because nerve supply to the flexor digitorum profundus is spared. As a result, the extension at the metacarpophalangeal joint is associated with active flexion of the interphalangeal joints of medial 2 digits. This is known as ulnar paradox, in which a more proximal injury of ulnar nerve at the elbow appears to produce lesser degree of claw hand than at wrist. So paradox is that if the injury is more proximal, the effect of lesion is less pronounced, whereas if the injury is more distal, if it is at wrist, the effects are more pronounced. The claw hand is more marked. With this, we come to end of the lecture on the front of forearm. Thank you.